So, before I get into my story, let me just make it clear that I don't have anything against people who believe a lot in horoscopes and tarot, clairvoyance. It's just that it's not really my cup of tea and I don't actually believe it. Especially if my stepmother has something to do with that. There's no way I'm going to give it a chance. My stepmom, let's call her Cindy, has been a part of my life for the past 8 years, and she's been a total pain for all those years. I'm 26 now, and even though I have never lived with her, I've always had to put up with her and her extra interference in my life whenever I've gone over to meet my dad, and it's always been extremely annoying. I lost my biological mom when I was 3 years old, and after that, my dad never remarried until Cindy, so I did lack a maternal influence in my life, but I never thought that I didn't have both my parents because my dad would always be there for me. And he never let me feel the absence of my mother. What I'm trying to say is, I did not really need Cindy to start trying to mother me, especially at the age when she met me. My dad started dating her when I was 18, so I was already a full blown adult. There was no point in trying to treat me like a child and trying to interfere in my life and influence my choices, but nevertheless, she would do exactly that. And it would really tick me off. I even spoke to my father about it, but he said that she was only trying to look out for me and I should appreciate it, but I had a hard time doing that. She and I have basically never gotten along. She always has had a tendency to pick on my choices, try and put me down, and I've always found it incredibly annoying. So I stay away from her, but of course, my dad does listen to everything she says. He's been smitten with her ever since he started dating her. When they got married 5 years ago, he started obeying her even more. Look, honestly, I understand why he would want to listen to his wife. He adores her. He wants to respect her and everything, but I think in certain cases it just gets way too much. For instance, 3 years ago, she started taking him to see an astrologer that her friend had recommended to her. And he was not a hack like all the others, which I really have a hard time believing. She kept asking my dad to accompany her for a visit and a reading, and eventually he gave in, and since then he's been a different man altogether. He consults this astrologer for everything, and I can't exactly prove it, but I have a feeling that he definitely is a fraud. And Cindy has been using him to control and manipulate my father somehow. Because how come every time they go for a reading, the decision that my father makes later on is based on that reading is always somehow in favor of Cindy? So far, she's been able to get him to agree to renovate and remodel the house, get rid of all the negative energy, and basically, that was a way for her to shift all the old furniture that my mother had picked out on her own to the attic, and even sell certain things that my mom liked. Then she was able to get him to agree to transfer one of my father's real estate properties to her. And recently she's been trying to get him to transfer some shares of my father's company to her. That is something I'm absolutely not going to allow to happen at all. From when I was a child, my father has always told me that I'm the one who's going to be inheriting the company. And if that's the case, I don't want Cindy to have anything to do with it. And if she becomes a shareholder, that's inevitably going to happen. And I don't want that. Their personal equation can stay at home. I do not want it at work. But somehow she's been using the astrologer to convince my father that this is a good idea and that she deserves to be a shareholder, despite knowing nothing about the business and not even making an effort to know about it. All these past years, ever since she started dating my father and moving in with him, all she's done is sit at home and she doesn't even do any housework or anything. We have a housekeeper for all that. So she basically just spends my father's money, and I don't think it's a good idea to have her on board as a shareholder. And I've been trying to convince my father of it, though he believes otherwise. Because of this fraud astrologer, he is strongly convinced that Cindy will bring positive energy to the company and will double our profits. I don't buy it at all. For the past few weeks, I've been trying to talk to him and get through to him in this regard, but he doesn't agree with me, and recently we had a pretty big fight about it as well. A week and a half ago, I spoke to him and I was trying to convince him not to get Cindy on board. He got so mad. He told me that if I kept this up, then he would have to cut me off altogether. And that meant he would fire me as well. So not only would I lose my job and my position in my dad's company, I would also lose any hope of inheriting it in future. And trust me, I really wanted to quit because it was getting really frustrating, but I had already put in a lot of years and hard work into this, so I was not about to let it go so easily, just because of Cindy. So I gave it a rest for a couple of days. I didn't speak to my dad, but instead of sitting and moping, I was formulating a plan to convince him that I was right. And so I did exactly what Cindy had been doing, and I hired an actor to help me out here. I guess you guys can already figure out where this is going, so yes. A few days back, I made up to my dad by visiting him with flowers and telling him that I knew that he really believed in his astrologer and did not do anything without consulting him, but I had a newer and better one in town and he was only here for a limited amount of time, so we could go see him together. We could learn what he had to say about bringing Cindy on board and cutting me out and all that. I was very subtle with it. I did not try to push it too hard. I kept it as casual as possible, and within a few hours he was convinced and we visited the actor I had hired. And everything was pretty convincing, so my dad had no issues believing it. I had even created a fake website singing praises of this new astrologer. Looked pretty real, and the venue that I had booked for his reading and all the other actors that I had hired as extras to make it feel as exclusive as possible also did a pretty good job. So after the reading, my father was totally in a daze, and that's exactly what I had intended. I felt a bit guilty about it because I had manipulated my father, but after all, that's exactly what Cindy had been doing all along as well. And I had tried to do things the right way, and it had not worked well in my favor. So this was all that I was left with, and thankfully the actors did a pretty believable job of it all. And even the setting felt so real that I was impressed. So it was probably hard for my dad to discount everything that he had been told. And I had already instructed the actor to heavily imply that my father would be in grave danger at his age if he did not take some time off from work and start trying to hand over the reins to me, because in the end, that's what would be the best for the company and him both. He was very mystical about it as well, but the message was pretty clever, and once my dad and I walked out, I could see that my dad had been affected by all of this, but I didn't push it. I let him go back home and decide for himself what he thought about all this. Anyway, that was a few days back, and 2 days ago my dad called me up and he invited me to his place because I had been giving him some space to figure out what he wanted. Thankfully, my plan had worked, and over dinner he told me that he was thinking about taking whatever had been told seriously, and he was planning on cutting down his hours at work. Because he was aging, he wanted to spend more time at home with his wife. Besides, I was going to eventually take over in a few years, so I might as well start practicing now. And in a very surprising move, he told me that to make sure that he doesn't go back on what he said, he has decided to start the paperwork for transferring the position of CEO from him to me entirely. It's going to take a few months for it to be completed, and in the meantime, I can start training and grooming myself to take over, and in the end, I'll be the CEO in a couple of months. Obviously, I had to explain my plan to have some effect, but this was way beyond what I had expected, and it was literally difficult for me to hold back my tears when I was thanking my father. And I guess this just made up for everything that's happened. He also told me that he had been thinking about all of this for a while, but he had just put it on hold because he was conflicted about all of it. And then when he visited the astrologer with me, he feels like it was a sign from the universe to step back and let me handle things because I was not a little girl anymore. I could definitely live up to his expectations. So he and I were quite happy with this. And the only person we had a sour face at the dinner table when all of this was being talked about was Cindy, naturally. I didn't pay much attention to her because honestly, I had got what I wanted and she was not going to get what she wanted because there was no way I was going to let her become a shareholder at any point. And even my father was way too excited about taking some time off of work because he's been working ever since he was a teenager. He's always been a hard worker, so I think this is a well-earned and deserved period of rest that he is going to have now. But anyway, I did not really realize exactly how bitter Cindy was about all of this until she took me aside after dinner, right when I was about to leave. While my dad was attending to a work call, she cornered me and she started telling me that she knew exactly what had happened. And she knew for a fact that the astrologer that I had hired couldn't have possibly been real, and I was doing all of this to manipulate my father, and she was going to sue me for fraud. I don't know how she figured out any of this. But I didn't really feel threatened. I didn't even feel scared by what she was saying because I knew it was not actually going to happen. In fact, I was glad she had dropped the act of caring about me like her own daughter and all of that. And she was finally confronting me and showing her true colors because I could also be myself now and let her see that I really did not like her or care for her at all. I told her that I didn't know what she was referring to because as far as I was concerned, the astrologer that I had taken my father to was completely valid. Then she started telling me that she had gone through the website and everything, and it was very obvious that I was the one who had created it because she had spoken to her friends. Nobody had heard of this guy ever, even the people who were really into astrology and readings. She started to tell me again that she was going to sue me over this, that I was influencing my father incorrectly, and that's when I lost it and told her she could do whatever she wanted. And she did not scare me because I knew for a fact that she had been doing the exact same thing. And though I could not prove it, I knew what she was up to. So she did not intimidate me at all. She tried to deny it, but from the way she got so defensive immediately, I knew that I had hit a nerve. But anyway, there was no point in standing there arguing with her, so I got rid of her. I went home and now it's been 2 days and I had been doing well, but then last evening I received a message from Cindy saying that she was very disappointed I had chosen to manipulate my father like this, knowing that he was a bit vulnerable in these areas. And he always had been quite easy to influence, especially when it came to the people he loved. She told me that I was misusing the power I held in his life to get what I wanted. And it was really low of me, especially as his daughter. I knew that she was trying to guilt trip me, and I guess somewhere it worked because now I feel bad. I don't know what to say. I feel like I did something wrong, so I just wanted to ask AITA for trying to manipulate my father to do the right thing. Update 1. Hi, so it's been a week since my original post, and recently I decided I was going to have to come clean to my father because I was not comfortable with what I had done. It was not just Cindy trying to guilt with me, it was my own conscience telling me that what I had done was not exactly the right way to do things, and I don't care if Cindy was doing that. Because at the end of the day, I'm not Cindy. I do not intend on becoming anything like her. I do not ever want to be as manipulative as that. And the only way to set things right was to talk to my father and tell him the truth about what I had done. In the beginning, I was obviously very skeptical about it. I didn't think it would pay off well, but in the end, I knew that I would just have to rip the band-aid off and tell him about what I had done. So I went over to his place a couple of days back, and thankfully, Cindy was not at home at the time to gloat about all of this. That made things slightly easier, but even then, while I was telling him about everything, I could just see his face falling. And I could see that disappointment in his expression. It just broke my heart. I thought he was going to yell at me and he was going to scold me or something, but in the end, he just asked me why I would do something like this when I could have just spoken to him and tried to convince him the right way. instead of trying to take advantage of his belief in such things. Before that, I did not think that I was going to justify anything that I had done. But when he asked me that, I felt like I had to tell him that, to be fair, I'd been trying to convince him for quite a long time, but then he had refused to listen to me. And he had even threatened to fire me. So I had to look for alternative ways because I couldn't let him do whatever he wanted just because Cindy had suddenly become so important that he couldn't see beyond her. I told him I'd been feeling quite bitter about everything that's been going on, and while I was not proud of what I had done, I had just been left with no other option because I felt like Cindy had been using the astrologer to manipulate him constantly, and he had been falling for it because he seemed to believe in all of it. So I used the same strategy, and that's when he started looking surprised because I'm guessing that this had never occurred to him. He asked me how I was so sure that it was simply manipulating him through the astrologer, because he personally did not see it that way. And then I had to explain to him my theory about how I believed it was Cindy telling the astrologer what exactly to say, because in the end, it was always she who benefited from his readings. And from whatever he had told me, I always found it very weird that the astrologer was so specific about everything because, as far as I was concerned, clairvoyance cannot be that specific. He started to think about it, and after a while he told me that even if that was the case, it was still not fair for me to hire actors and put up a whole thing and completely misuse his trust in me. I told him it was completely fair of him to say that, and I could understand where he was coming from. I also told him that if this made him change his mind about letting me take over the company because I had been dishonest with him, then I would completely understand that as well, because at the end of the day, I had dug my own grave, so now I had to lie in it. He didn't say anything to that. He said he needed some time to think about certain things, and he would get back to me later, and that was that. After this, I left, and since I've come back home, we haven't really spoken. It has been a few days, and I keep looking forward to some sort of message from him. Maybe a phone call, even an email or something, but nothing yet. I don't even know what's going on with him, whether he has confronted her about what I told him or not, but to be honest, I don't really think that matters anymore. Because ultimately, all this is going to be a loss to me. I don't want to lose my father, I don't want him to hate me, but I did something wrong and I guess I'll have to pay for it eventually. The whole thing I think I did right was the fact that I told him about it, and that's the only way I can justify all of this in my conscience. I know it's going to be hard, at least for the next couple of days, unless I know what's going on with my dad. But I'll have to deal with it. He hasn't even been coming into work, but everything has been going on as usual. He has left instructions with his secretary and everything, but I haven't seen him in a while. So things must be pretty bad if he's not even going into work. Update 2. So it's been 2 weeks since my previous update, and a couple of days back my father finally reached out to me. He asked me to come over for dinner because he had a lot to talk to me about. I found it very weird because the dinner invitation was, well, it was a good news, and I didn't think that he would have good news to share with me after all the things that we've been through recently. But anyway, I still went, and surprisingly, Cindy was not there to open the door when I walked in. And in fact, she wasn't there at all. When I asked my dad what was going on, he said that they were taking a break. He sounded very somber about it, and I wanted to know more about it, but he did not offer any more information, so I didn't ask either because I didn't want to push my luck. Anyway, over dinner he told me that he had thought about it, and he said that he still wanted me to have the company, and he still wanted me to lead after he retired. And he planned on retiring pretty soon because he didn't think that what I had done would affect my ability to run a business. He trusted me fully even after what had happened, because at the end of the day, it was not like he was completely free, because he had been totally deluded and hoodwinked by the whole astrology thing. He apologized to me for making me feel like I had to resort to such means, and he also said that he was not going to be believing in astrology or any of these things anymore, because clearly it would be very easy to manipulate him if he did. And that's what has been happening so far, and he's not going to stand for it anymore. That was a huge move because in the past couple of years, astrology and all these manifestation techniques and everything has been a huge part of my father's life. Believe it or not, he was letting it run his life. And for him to decide to let it all go all of a sudden was a pretty big thing. And I can't be sure of it because he did not say anything about it. But I'm guessing that it has something to do with the fact that he must have confronted Cindy or found out what she had been up to, and I'm guessing that my theory might have been correct. That she had been using astrology to manipulate him somehow. Of course, it's still not like I can actually prove it or anything, but given his actions and his recent decisions, it might be true. Anyway, I thought it was a good thing because I made him more vulnerable for sure, and he's always been a very emotional man. He's always been sensitive, so that wasn't good for him, and it made him easy to control. That was something he was right about. As for the whole Cindy thing, I haven't asked about it, and I'm not going to ask until he tells me about it on his own, because I think this is something very personal, and clearly he's going through something. Now, I don't want to be pushy. Like I said, if he wants to tell me, if he wants to talk about it, he will do so on his own. But for now, I think he wants some peace and quiet. I think the dinner with me and talking to me was difficult for him as it is, because there were quite a few long silences and he was trying really hard to make it seem like he was okay. But I could tell he was trying hard not to crumble and he was doing his best, so I don't want to make it more difficult for him. If he and Cindy decide to separate, I know for a fact that he'll be very upset. Far more upset than she will be, because I know for a fact that he loves her a lot more than she does. And I know that it's going to be very difficult for him. But I think if that happens, I will be quite content with it because they might love each other, but they are definitely not good for each other. Since Cindy has always tried to control him, and she has succeeded to a certain degree. But what kind of relationship is this, where your wife just wants to control you all the time, where she wants every decision to be made in a way that benefits her? It's clearly not equal, and I don't want to say it out loud, but I'm pretty sure that she's been using my dad all along. She's been stringing him along, and I think she might love him in her own screwed up, messed up way, but it's not good for him. And I think it would be good for them to separate. And the fact that they are taking a break, I don't know, it might do them both good. But anyway, all that aside, I'm just incredibly relieved and happy that my dad has decided not to cut me out of his life and the company. Because honestly, I don't know how I would have dealt with that kind of thing. I know I would have accepted it. I would have had to. Because I did manipulate him and I did exactly what I looked down on Cindy for doing. So I would have deserved it, I guess. But then the way he dealt with the situation is something I'm very grateful for. He decided to be the bigger person. He even decided to apologize to me, and I'm truly grateful to him for it. After all, he's my dad, and I never want to lose him. He means the world to me in spite of all his flaws and shortcomings, and I'm sure that it's the same with him as well. I know it. Update 3. So it's been a month and a half since my previous update, and things are going well with my father. Not so much with Cindy, because unfortunately for her, what I had predicted had turned out to be true, and apparently my dad caught her out by simply speaking to the astrologer, and he offered him a lot of money to tell him the truth, so he gave in and informed my dad that he had indeed been instructed by Cindy to tell him exactly what she wanted whenever he came over for readings. And that's how he had been manipulated all along. She had obviously been paying him for it as well, so it was pretty bad. When my dad confronted Cindy, she tried to make it seem like she was doing it all for his own good, because he could be very stubborn sometimes, and she thought this would be the only way to get him to do things, no questions asked. My dad obviously lost it. They had a huge fight, and since then she's been living separately. And they are going for marriage counseling, but I don't know if it's going well or not. Some days it feels like he's going to get back with her, but most days Feels like he wants nothing to do with her, so things are pretty confusing right now. If you ask me, I think they might end up getting divorced, but well, I don't know for sure. But it doesn't really matter to me because at the end of the day, things with my dad are going well for me, and that's all that matters. I'm happy, and soon enough I'll be taking over the company. He's been training me personally, and I'm doing pretty well. I'm excited. Stay tuned for more stories from our girl relationships.